A 2,000-year-old bronze gear should not predict a solar eclipse. That is the profound puzzle at the heart of an impossible ancient artifact. These objects exist in a strange space between discovery and disbelief, directly challenging the established timelines of science and history. By the end of this exploration, you will gain a new framework for understanding the hidden complexities of our shared past. We will examine a mechanical computer found in a shipwreck and a medieval map that shows a continent buried under ice. How did such knowledge exist so long ago? What does it truly mean when an artifact arrives from a time it does not belong to? Are we prepared to reconsider everything we think we know about human progress? The term for these objects is as peculiar as their nature: OOP arts, or out-of-place artifacts. It is a simple label for a deeply complicated idea. An OOP art is not merely old or unusual. It is a piece of evidence that appears to be technologically, historically, or geographically impossible. It is a wrench thrown into the smooth gears of our accepted timeline. The established view of history, often called mainstream archaeology or conventional science, follows a clear narrative of human progress. It outlines a gradual climb from stone tools to bronze, from simple societies to complex civilizations, with knowledge building slowly upon itself over generations. This framework is not a conspiracy, it is a method, a way to organize a chaotic past into a story we can understand and study. When an artifact is discovered that seems to belong to a much later era, or demonstrates knowledge thought impossible for its time, the immediate reaction from this established view is often one of skepticism. Could it be a forgery? Could it have been misdated? Could we be misunderstanding its purpose entirely? This skepticism is a vital part of the scientific process, a necessary filter to separate genuine mysteries from simple mistakes. Yet, there exists a growing chorus of researchers and thinkers who argue that this filter sometimes works too well, dismissing genuine anomalies without a full hearing. They propose that some OOP arts point not to errors in the artifact, but to potential gaps in our own story. They suggest that advanced knowledge may have arisen in ancient times, only to be lost through the collapse of civilizations, natural disasters, or the simple fading of oral traditions over centuries. This creates a fascinating tension, a battleground of ideas where every new discovery is scrutinized from two very different perspectives. One side seeks to fit the object into the existing map of history, while the other wonders if the map itself might need redrawing. Our journey through these 20 artifacts will not demand that you choose a side immediately. Instead, we will walk that line of tension, presenting the object, the conventional explanations, and the alternative questions it raises. We begin this investigation not with a conclusion, but with a shared sense of curiosity. What if some of these impossible things are, in fact, real? The first artifact on our list embodies the very definition of an OOP art. It is a lump of corroded bronze and wood, recovered from the silent darkness of a 2,000-year-old shipwreck near the island of Antikythera. For decades after its discovery, it was considered a curious but unremarkable piece of ancient debris, a museum oddity. It was not until the mid-20th century that historians, using modern imaging techniques, began to peer beneath the layers of calcified corrosion. What they found was nothing short of breathtaking. This was not a statue or a simple tool. It was a machine, an intricate, handcrafted assembly of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, housed in a wooden frame about the size of a shoebox. Inscriptions on its casing served as a user's manual, detailing its functions. This device, now known as the Antikythera Mechanism, could predict the movements of the sun and the moon, chart the positions of known planets, and even forecast solar and lunar eclipses with astonishing precision. It was, in every meaningful sense, an ancient analog computer. The sophistication of its gearing is a profound shock to our historical timeline. Its design principles, involving differential gears and complex astronomical cycles, would not be seen again in European technology until the precision clockwork of the 18th century. That is a gap of over 1,800 years. So the pressing question is not merely what this device did, but what its existence implies. It did not emerge from a vacuum. The engineering knowledge required to design and build such a mechanism represents a pinnacle of Hellenistic science and craftsmanship. It suggests a workshop tradition, a school of thought, and a level of technical ambition that our history books simply do not capture. The Antikythera Mechanism was not a one-off miracle. It was a product of its time, yet it stands utterly alone in the archaeological record. What other marvels of that lost technological culture were aboard that ill-fated ship or remain buried elsewhere, waiting to be found? This single artifact forces a humbling reconsideration. It tells us that a peak of ancient knowledge was reached, a peak so high that its shadow would not be seen again for centuries. And then it was utterly forgotten. If the Antikythera Mechanism represents a forgotten peak of mechanical genius, the next artifact suggests an even quieter, more enigmatic form of ancient power. In the storied lands of Mesopotamia, within a museum collection in Baghdad, rests a cluster of unassuming objects. They are simple clay jars, each about the size of a hand, sealed with asphalt. Inside each one, archaeologists found a carefully placed copper cylinder, and within that, an iron rod. Dated to the Parthian or Sasanian period, roughly 2,000 years ago, these items were catalogued as curious storage vessels and largely set aside. But to the eyes of a modern observer, the arrangement is startlingly familiar. A clay pot acts as an insulating container. The copper and the iron, two different metals, are kept separate but in close proximity. This is the fundamental recipe for a basic electrical cell. In the 1930s, a researcher named Wilhelm Koenig looked at these jars and asked a revolutionary question. What if they were not for storage but for generating something? He proposed that if the jar were filled with an acidic liquid, something commonly available like vinegar or fermented grape juice, a chemical reaction would occur. The acidic solution would act as an electrolyte, allowing electrons to flow between the iron rod and the copper cylinder. The result would be a small but measurable electric current, roughly 1 volt of electricity. This collection of artifacts became known, famously, as the Baghdad Battery. The implications are as tantalizing as they are debated. A single volt is not enough to power a light, but it is precisely the kind of low-level current used in a process called electroplating. This is where a thin layer of a precious metal, like gold, is transferred onto the surface of a less valuable one, like silver, through an electrical charge. Intriguingly, archaeologists have found numerous examples of ancient Mesopotamian jewelry where exquisite golden layers are fused onto silver objects with a uniformity and thinness that is difficult to achieve by traditional gilding methods alone. Could these jars have been the secret? The conventional explanation is cautious. Many mainstream historians suggest the jars were simply used for storing sacred scrolls, with the metal components acting as protective casings. The asphalt seal, they argue, was for containment, not for holding liquid. Yet the very design seems perfectly suited for an electrochemical purpose, and the electroplating theory offers a compelling, practical application. Beyond that, other possibilities emerge. Some have wondered if the gentle current was used for medicinal purposes, a form of ancient analgesic therapy, or perhaps had a role in religious ceremonies, creating a mysterious tingling sensation to signify a divine presence. Whether it was a battery or not, the object forces a profound question. If it was a battery, it means a practical understanding of electrochemical principles existed nearly 2 millennia before Alessandro Volta invented his voltaic pile in the year 1800. This is not about ancient people having electricity in the modern sense, but about them potentially harnessing a fundamental force of nature for small-scale, specialized use. It suggests a thread of experimental knowledge, a curiosity about the natural world that operated outside the grand narratives of war and empire. The Baghdad Battery, whether definitively proven or forever debated, stands as a quiet, potent symbol. It represents the possibility that innovation in the ancient world was not a single, linear path, but a scattered garden of ideas where some seeds grew into mighty oaks, while others, like this one, remained small, mysterious buds, waiting centuries for someone to recognize what they might have been. A book that cannot be read is a unique form of mystery. It holds knowledge just out of reach, its secrets locked behind an impenetrable veil of ink and vellum. This is the enduring enigma of the Voynich Manuscript, an artifact that has resisted understanding for over 6 centuries. Discovered by a Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich in 1912, the manuscript is a small, dense codex of about 240 pages, each filled from edge to edge with graceful, looping handwriting in an alphabet that matches no known language on Earth. Carbon dating places its creation firmly in the early 15th century, in the heart of Renaissance Europe, a time of flourishing art and science. Yet its contents feel alien, transplanted from another world entirely. The text is accompanied by vivid, perplexing illustrations that only deepen the mystery. There are pages dedicated to botany, showing elaborate plants with bulbous roots and fantastical leaves, species that no botanist has ever been able to identify in the natural world. Other sections feature intricate astronomical diagrams with zodiac symbols arranged in unfamiliar constellations, and circular charts that seem to map celestial cycles in a way modern scholars cannot fully parse. Perhaps the most discussed images are those of small, nude female figures, often depicted bathing in or connected by pipes to a strange, greenish fluid flowing through a network of vessels. These sections are typically interpreted as biological or balneological, relating to baths and health, but their exact meaning remains obscure. For over 100 years, the world's top cryptographers, including teams from both world wars who broke enemy codes, have turned their skills to the Voynich. They have applied every tool of linguistic analysis, from frequency counts to pattern recognition, searching for the telltale footprint of a real language, whether encoded, abbreviated, or invented. The results have been a century of frustration. The manuscript's internal structure shows a complexity consistent with a genuine language, with word and sentence patterns that are not random, yet it defies all known linguistic frameworks. This has led to a spectrum of theories. The conventional, skeptical view is that it is an elaborate medieval hoax, a meaningless text created to be sold as a curiosity to a wealthy patron. Yet, the incredible effort and expensive materials involved, coupled with the consistent and complex structure of the script, make a purposeless forgery seem an unsatisfactory answer. Other researchers propose it is a encoded pharmacopoeia, a secret herbal manual protecting valuable medical knowledge. The strange plants could be symbolic representations of ingredients, and the bathing figures might illustrate therapeutic treatments. The most tantalizing possibility is that it represents a completely lost system of knowledge, perhaps from a cultural tradition or even a small, isolated community whose language and worldview vanished without a trace. The Voynich Manuscript does more than challenge linguistics. It challenges our very understanding of what constitutes a record. It sits in a university library, fully available for study, and yet it is as sealed as a tomb. It is a monument to the limits of our decipherment, a quiet reminder that the past can communicate in ways we have simply forgotten how to hear. In its beautiful, unreadable pages, we are faced with a profound choice: to dismiss it as nonsense or to accept it as evidence that the landscape of ancient thought may have contained continents we have not yet learned to map. A map should reflect the world as its maker knew it, a portrait of understood geography. Yet one particular chart seems to contain knowledge its creator could not possibly have possessed. In the year 1513, Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis compiled a world map, drawing upon dozens of source charts, some of which he noted were from the time of Alexander the Great. Today, only a fragment of this map survives, housed in the Topkapi Palace Library in Istanbul. At first glance, it is a beautiful artifact of the age of exploration, showing the known coastlines of Europe, Africa, and the newly encountered lands of the Americas with surprising detail. But it is the lower section of this fragment that has ignited a century of intense debate and wonder. There, curling southward from the Atlantic, is a landmass with a distinctly familiar shape. Modern analysis has identified it as the coastline of Antarctica, specifically the region known as Queen Maud Land. The profound mystery is not just that the map shows Antarctica, but how it shows it. The continent was not officially sighted until the year 1820, over 3 centuries after Piri Reis put ink to parchment. More startlingly, the coastline on the map is not depicted as it appears today, a solid mass of ice extending far out into the sea. Instead, it shows what looks like the actual, ice-free coastline of the continent, the shape of the land itself beneath its frozen mantle. This detail aligns eerily well with modern seismic and sonar surveys of the subglacial topography, surveys that were only possible with 20th century technology. The implication is staggering. The source maps Piri Reis used must have been based on surveys of Antarctica from a time when its coasts were not covered by ice. According to geological evidence, the last time the coast of Queen Maud Land was in such a condition was thousands of years ago, possibly as far back as 6,000 years before the present era. This presents an impossible scenario for conventional history. How could medieval or ancient mariners, presumably long before any recognized classical civilization, have possessed the nautical technology and cartographic skill to chart a continent at the bottom of the world? And why would such knowledge have been preserved, copied, and passed down through millennia, only to surface in the notes of an Ottoman admiral? Skeptical scholars offer alternative explanations. Some suggest the landmass is not Antarctica at all, but a speculative, distorted version of South America's southern coast, a common practice in early cartography where unknown regions were filled with guesswork. Others argue that the apparent accuracy is a coincidence, a trick of projection and interpretation. Yet the specific correlations with subglacial features remain a haunting detail that coincidence struggles to dismiss. The Piri Reis Map, therefore, is more than an old navigational aid. It is a potential relic of a lost chapter in human exploration. It hints at the existence of a pre-classical seafaring civilization, or perhaps a network of cultures with knowledge of global geography that was later fragmented and forgotten. This map does not just show a continent. It suggests a world where ancient horizons were far broader than our history books have ever allowed. It forces us to ask what other forgotten journeys are recorded only as cryptic lines on lost pieces of parchment. Deep within the stone walls of an Egyptian temple, a carved image whispers a question about the nature of ancient light. In the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, a series of intricate bas-reliefs have captivated and puzzled observers for generations. One panel in particular stands out. It depicts a strange, elongated object shaped like a giant elongated pear or a modern light bulb. Inside this bulbous form rests a snake, coiled in a way that strongly resembles the filament of an incandescent lamp. This bulb is held aloft by a pillar, and from its base extends a cord that connects to a box, which is being gripped by a kneeling figure, often identified as a god or a protective spirit. Another figure appears to be acting as an operator, steadying the entire assembly. To a modern eye, the interpretation seems almost self-evident. It looks like an ancient electrical device, a lamp powered by some form of energy stored in that box. This carving has become famously known as the Dendera Light. The conventional interpretation from Egyptology is, of course, rooted in symbolism, not technology. Scholars explain that this is a representation of a deeply important mythological concept. The snake is a symbol of the god Harsomptus, and the bulb-like shape is not a glass enclosure, but a lotus flower from which the serpent is emerging. The connected box is seen as a divine vessel, and the entire scene is interpreted as a depiction of creation, rebirth, and the journey of the sun god through the underworld, a story carved in stone to convey spiritual truths, not technical manuals. The two explanations, the symbolic and the technological, exist in parallel, neither fully able to dismiss the other. Those who see an electrical device point to the precision of the imagery, the clear separation of components, the cable, the socket, and the insulating pillar. They ask, why would a purely symbolic scene require such a specific, almost mechanical rendering? They connect it back to the possibility of artifacts like the Baghdad Battery, wondering if this was a representation of applied knowledge, a way to illustrate a sacred technology that provided literal as well as spiritual illumination. The mainstream view counters that, imposing a 20th century interpretation onto a 3,000-year-old religious carving is a classic case of pareidolia, seeing familiar patterns where none were intended. The ancient Egyptians were masters of symbolic art, and every element in their temples served a mythic purpose. The real question this artifact poses is about the lens through which we view the past. Are we seeing what was actually there, or are we projecting our own world onto theirs? The Dendera Light does not offer a clear answer, and that is its power. It forces a dialogue between two very different ways of understanding human achievement. One sees a profound spiritual metaphor, a triumph of symbolic thought. The other sees a potential blueprint for a forgotten practical art, perhaps in a way that defies our modern categories. It could even be both, a sacred symbol inspired by a rare and wondrous physical phenomenon understood only by the temple's innermost initiates. This carving challenges us to hold two possibilities in mind at once, to accept that the ancient mind was capable of profound abstraction, while also remaining open to the startling idea that their myths might sometimes have been grounded in a reality we are only now beginning to rediscover. A model of a bird should not possess the precise aerodynamics of a modern aircraft, yet that is the quiet challenge presented by a small wooden artifact discovered in an 1898 excavation of a tomb at Saqqara, Egypt. Dated to around 200 years before the Common Era, this object is officially catalogued as a bird figurine, a common funerary offering meant to symbolize the soul's flight into the afterlife. But to an eye trained in modern engineering, its form whispers of something else entirely. Known simply as the Saqqara Bird, it is carved from sycamore wood and measures about 14 centimeters from wingtip to wingtip. It has the smooth, swept-back wings of a bird in flight, a streamlined body or fuselage, and a distinct tail. It is this tail that holds the key to the mystery. Unlike the horizontal, flattened tails of actual birds which provide balance and steering, the Saqqara bird's tail is vertical, a flat, perpendicular plane rising from its body. This is not an anatomical feature found in nature. It is, however, a fundamental component of aircraft design, a vertical stabilizer crucial for maintaining directional stability in flight, preventing an aircraft from yawing or spinning out of control. The artifact's wings are also subtly angled, a design that in modern terms would generate lift when moving through a fluid like air. Intrigued by these features, researchers in later years subjected replicas of the Saqqara bird to wind tunnel testing. The results were startling. The object does indeed exhibit lift-generating properties. With a slight adjustment, the addition of a small horizontal stabilizer it lacks, the model demonstrates stable gliding flight. So what exactly was this object? The mainstream archaeological interpretation remains firmly grounded in the symbolic. It is a stylized bird, perhaps a falcon representing the god Horus, and its unusual tail is simply an artistic convention or a result of the wood's grain and the carver's tool. It was a child's toy, a ceremonial object placed in a tomb or a weather vane. These are all plausible, culturally consistent explanations. The alternative question, however, persists. Could it also be something more? The aerodynamic principles it inadvertently, or perhaps intentionally, embodies are sophisticated. They are the principles that would not be formally understood and applied until the pioneering work of figures like George Cayley and the Wright brothers in the 19th and 20th centuries. This leads to a provocative line of inquiry. Was the Saqqara bird merely a lucky artistic accident? Or does it suggest that the ancient Egyptians, through keen observation of flight, perhaps of seeds spiraling on the wind or birds riding thermal currents, had grasped empirical concepts of aerodynamics? Could it even be a scaled-down model of a larger, lost glider design, a testament to a forgotten line of experimental engineering? There is no evidence of ancient Egyptian aviation, no grand hangars or pilot manuals. But the artifact itself is a tangible piece of data, a physical object whose shape interacts with the air in a specific, functional way. It stands at the crossroads of art, ritual, and potential proto-science. The Saqqara bird does not demand we believe in ancient airplanes. Instead, it invites us to reconsider the depth of observational genius present in ancient cultures. It asks us to look at a simple wooden carving and see not just a symbol of faith, but a frozen moment of curiosity, a three-dimensional question posed in sycamore wood about the very nature of flight. A spark plug belongs in an engine, not entombed within a stone. This was the startling claim that emerged from the mountains of California in the year 1961. 3 individuals searching for geodes, those fascinating hollow rocks lined with crystals, cracked one open expecting a glimpse of natural beauty. Instead, they found a small, mechanical-looking object encased perfectly within. The outer layer of the geode was hardened clay and pebbles, and running through its center was a metal rod surrounded by a ceramic collar, with what appeared to be a hexagonal nut at one end. To the discoverers, it looked unmistakably like a 20th century spark plug. The true mystery, however, was not just the object's identity, but its proposed age. The finders took it to a geologist who reportedly examined the hardened layers encasing it and suggested the nodule could have taken 500,000 years to form. The story exploded, creating a classic and sensational OOP art narrative, a piece of modern technology impossibly sealed inside ancient stone. The artifact became known as the Coso Artifact, named for the region where it was found. For a time, it was held up as the ultimate evidence of a lost advanced civilization or even ancient visitors from other worlds, a perfect anachronism that seemed to defy all logic. The allure of such a discovery is powerful, offering a dramatic rewrite of history with a single, tangible piece of evidence. Yet this story serves as a critical lesson in the rigorous process of historical and archaeological scrutiny. As the artifact gained notoriety, other researchers began a more thorough investigation. They obtained better X-ray images which revealed more details of the internal object. Independent geologists questioned the original dating, noting that the hard, concretion-like nodule could form much more quickly around a man-made object, especially in mineral-rich environments. The most definitive analysis came from those who specialized in early automotive parts. They examined the X-rays and the descriptions meticulously. The specific design, with its ceramic insulator and distinctive hexagonal shape, was identified not as a mysterious relic, but as a very specific model of spark plug manufactured by the Champion Company in the 1920s. It was in all likelihood a perfectly ordinary spark plug from the early days of the automobile. This revelation shifted the entire mystery. The question was no longer what it was, but how it got there. How did a 1920s spark plug become the core of what looked like a 500,000-year-old rock? The explanations are less dramatic but grounded in known geological processes. The spark plug could have been lost or discarded in the desert, perhaps near a mining operation or a roadside. Over decades, mineral-rich water percolating through the soil could have deposited layers of hard calcium carbonate and other minerals around it, cementing it into a tough, rock-like nodule in a process that might take only a few decades, not millennia. The desert environment, with its cycles of wet and dry, can accelerate this concretion process dramatically. The Coso Artifact, therefore, transforms from a world-changing anomaly into a profound cautionary tale. It highlights two pillars of scientific inquiry: context and careful dating. An object without a clear, documented discovery context is incredibly difficult to interpret accurately. The initial geological assessment, which suggested an immense age, was ultimately challenged by more complete analysis. This case powerfully illustrates how a mundane object, through a combination of unusual circumstances, genuine initial confusion, and the human desire for mystery, can become the centerpiece of an extraordinary claim. It does not diminish the importance of investigating anomalies, but rather reinforces the necessity of that investigation being patient, multidisciplinary, and open to revision. The real lesson of the Coso Artifact is about the journey from wonder to understanding. It reminds us that our scrutiny must be as relentless as our curiosity, for the truth of the past often lies not in the first, most exciting answer, but in the quiet, meticulous work that follows. The line between a simple tool and a temporal impossibility can be shockingly thin. In the year 1934, near the town of London, Texas, a couple walking along a creek bed made a bizarre discovery. Protruding from a solid chunk of rock was what appeared to be the weathered end of a wooden handle. Curious, they broke the rock open. Inside was a complete iron hammer, its head fused seamlessly into the stone, with a section of its original wooden handle extending outward, partially petrified. This object, known as the London Hammer or the London Artifact, presents a paradox so stark it seems to defy the very foundations of science. The rock encasing it was identified as Cretaceous sandstone, a formation dating to a period between 100 million and 140 million years ago. According to the established geological timeline, this was an age dominated by dinosaurs, an era that concluded tens of millions of years before the earliest hominids, the ancestors of humans, are believed to have walked the earth. The simple presence of a manufactured iron tool within such ancient stone would, if taken at face value, shatter our understanding of human origins and technological history. It would place a sophisticated metalworking culture in an age of giant reptiles. The hammer itself is a study in contradictions. Its design is unremarkable, reminiscent of late 19th century American tools, with a slightly unusual chemical composition in the iron. Yet the petrified wood of the handle is a key piece of the puzzle, suggesting a process of mineral replacement that typically requires immense spans of time. How could a relatively modern object become the literal heart of a stone formed in the deep past? Skeptical analysis provides a pathway, though not one without its own complexities. Geologists point to a natural phenomenon called concretion. This is a process where mineral-rich groundwater, percolating through sediments, can deposit layers of hard minerals like calcium carbonate or iron oxide around an object. Over time, this can cement the object into a hard, rock-like nodule. Crucially, this process does not necessarily require millions of years. Under the right chemical conditions, such as those found in certain mineral springs or sedimentary environments, a concretion can form in centuries, decades, or even less. The hammer could have been lost or discarded in the creek bed, perhaps by a 19th century prospector or settler. Over the years, mineral-laden water slowly encased it, hardening into a shell that, to the untrained eye, appears identical to ancient stone. The petrification of the wood handle, while suggestive of great age, can also occur on a much shorter timescale given a highly saturated mineral environment. The mainstream scientific conclusion is therefore that the London hammer is an intriguing example of a rapid geochemical concretion, not a relic from the age of dinosaurs. It is a testament to how nature can create the illusion of immense antiquity. Yet the enigma retains a stubborn power. For those who question the established timelines, the artifact represents the ultimate challenge. They ask, if the concretion process can be so swift, why do we use similar mineralization as evidence for dating other fossils and artifacts? How do we definitively distinguish between a concretion that formed in a few hundred years and one that formed over 100 million? The London hammer forces this uncomfortable but essential line of questioning. It compels a re-examination of our methods and assumptions. This artifact does not necessarily prove the existence of Cretaceous-era blacksmiths. Instead, it highlights the delicate interplay between an object and its context, and the profound responsibility we have in interpreting both. It stands as a monument to a single, persistent question: how do we know what we think we know about deep time? A geoglyph is a drawing on a scale that defies human perspective. Across the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca Desert holds one of archaeology's most monumental and mysterious legacies. These are not artifacts you can hold, but landscapes you must fly over to truly see. Created over a 1,000-year span, from roughly 500 years before the Common Era to 500 years after, the Nazca Lines are a vast gallery etched into the earth itself. By removing the dark, sun-baked surface stones to reveal the lighter-colored soil beneath, ancient artists and engineers created hundreds of immense figures. There are hummingbirds with wingspans stretching over 100 meters, a spider nearly 50 meters long, a monkey with an intricately coiled tail, and a condor whose form extends across the plateau. Interspersed with these biomorphic shapes are miles of perfectly straight lines, some running for kilometers, and complex geometric shapes like trapezoids and spirals. Their sheer size is the core of the enigma. Each one is so vast that its complete form is invisible from the ground, coalescing into a recognizable image only when viewed from hundreds of meters in the air. This fact alone ignites the central question: how, and more importantly why, would a people create art they could never fully perceive? The conventional archaeological consensus offers several compelling, earth-bound explanations. The leading theory positions the lines as a sacred landscape, a ritual pathway integral to religious ceremonies. Researchers suggest that the straight lines may have served as processional routes for water-related rituals, a critical act in one of the driest places on Earth. The animal figures likely represented deities or constellations, their forms walked upon as a means of spiritual communion. Another strong theory ties the lines to astronomy, proposing that many align with the rising and setting points of the sun, moon, and significant stars during solstices, functioning as a gigantic celestial calendar to mark agricultural cycles. The construction methods, while staggering in scale, are understood through practical archaeology. Using simple tools, ropes, and wooden stakes, the Nazca people could have scaled up small models into these gigantic designs through coordinated effort and basic surveying techniques, perhaps using a series of guideposts to maintain straight lines over long distances. The preservation of these lines for 2 millennia is due to the unique climate of the plateau, where minimal rain and wind have left the shallow grooves largely undisturbed. Yet the precision and ambition of the work continue to fuel alternative questions. The straightness of some lines is so exact that they seem to rival modern laser surveying over rugged, uneven terrain. The proportions of the animal figures remain perfectly balanced despite their monstrous scale, suggesting a master plan executed with remarkable consistency. This has led some to wonder if the Nazca people possessed a form of aerial technology, such as primitive hot air balloons or kites, to supervise the work, though no direct evidence for this exists. A more speculative line of thought asks if the glyphs were intended as messages not for themselves but for viewers we have not yet considered. The Nazca Lines, therefore, operate on two levels. They are a testament to the organizational power, spiritual depth, and artistic vision of a pre-Columbian society, a masterpiece of communal effort rooted in their relationship with a harsh environment. Simultaneously, they are a permanent question mark on the landscape, challenging our assumptions about the limits of ancient engineering and the very purpose of art. They remind us that human creativity is not bound by the logic of individual perception, but can be an act of faith, a dialogue with the cosmos, or a legacy intended for an audience not yet born, written across the very skin of the earth. Perfect spheres carved from solid rock seem to belong to a world of precision machinery, not ancient forests. Scattered across the river deltas and jungle floors of southern Costa Rica, these objects present a silent geometric mystery. Known as the stone spheres of Costa Rica, or locally as Los Bolas, they number in the hundreds. They range in size from a mere handful to colossal giants over 2 meters, 6 feet in diameter, weighing many tons. They were crafted by the Diquis culture, a sophisticated pre-Columbian society that flourished from around 300 to 1500 years after the Common Era. The material itself is a testament to their ambition, carved from incredibly hard stone like gabbro, a coarse volcanic rock, as well as limestone and sandstone. The true marvel, however, lies not in their substance but in their form. Their sphericity is not approximate, it is astonishingly precise. Many of the spheres, especially the larger ones, exhibit a near-perfect roundness and a surface smoothness that seems to defy the presumed limitations of Stone Age technology. How did a culture without metal tools, without the wheel, and without written records achieve such geometric perfection? The process remains a subject of intense speculation. Archaeologists suggest a method of persistent pecking and grinding, using other, harder stones to slowly shape the sphere, perhaps turning it constantly in a bed of sand and water to act as a natural abrasive and guide. This would have been a monumental undertaking of time and labor, a communal project spanning generations for a single large sphere. Yet, the method of final finishing, achieving that flawless, almost polished surface on such immense, heavy objects, is a detail lost to time. Then comes the second great puzzle, transportation. Many of these spheres were found miles from the nearest known quarry. How were multi-ton balls of solid rock moved through dense jungle and across rugged terrain? Theories propose the use of log rollers, rope systems, and earthen ramps, a feat of engineering that would require sophisticated communal organization and a deep understanding of physics. But the most haunting question is not how, but why. What purpose did these perfect forms serve? Their original placements have been disturbed over centuries, so their final configuration is a mystery. Some researchers propose an astronomical alignment, with the spheres arranged to mark solstices or track celestial bodies, turning the landscape into a giant observatory. Others see a social function, where the size and placement of spheres denoted the status and lineage of chieftains, serving as powerful symbols of authority and unity. A third perspective views them as deeply spiritual objects, representations of celestial bodies like the sun or moon, or perhaps symbols of perfection and harmony, used in sacred ceremonies. The Diquis culture left no written explanation, and their descendants' oral traditions were severed by the arrival of European colonizers. The spheres, therefore, stand as mute ambassadors of a lost worldview. They challenge the simplistic notion that pre-Columbian Central American societies were solely focused on subsistence or warfare. The investment required to create even one of these spheres speaks of a society with surplus resources, specialized artisans, and a powerful shared ideology, a culture capable of turning immense physical labor into enduring, abstract beauty. They are a reminder that technological sophistication can wear many faces, that the drive to create perfect form is a human impulse as ancient as the rocks themselves. In their silent, spherical presence, they ask us to measure a civilization not just by what it built for utility, but by what it crafted for meaning. A stone should not bear witness to a world that never was. In a private museum in Ica, Peru, rests a collection of over 15,000 stones that present one of the most visually shocking and contentious puzzles in all of archaeology. Known as the Ica Stones, these are river-smoothed andesite rocks, some as small as a fist, others large enough to require 2 hands to lift. Their surfaces are covered in fine, deep engravings, etched with a dark patina that suggests age. The images they depict, however, belong to a timeline that science insists is impossible. There are detailed renderings of what appear to be humans interacting with dinosaurs, not as prey, but sometimes in confrontational or even domestic scenes. Other stones show complex maps of constellations, some mirroring known star patterns while others seem entirely unfamiliar. Perhaps most startling are the illustrations of advanced medical procedures, including what looks like cesarean section surgery, organ transplants, and the use of tools for trepanation, the ancient practice of drilling into the skull. The narrative these stones collectively tell is one of a lost civilization possessing knowledge of paleontology, sophisticated astronomy, and medical science far beyond anything recorded in the conventional historical record for the Americas. The story of their discovery is where the controversy truly ignites. In the 1960s, a local farmer named Basilio Ashuya began selling these stones to Dr. Javier Cabrera, a physician who became their most ardent proponent. Ashuya later admitted, under pressure from authorities, that he and his family had carved the stones themselves as a way to make money from tourists. He demonstrated using a simple dental drill and claimed the aging was achieved by baking the stones in cow dung. This confession seemed to slam the door shut on the mystery, branding the entire collection an elaborate, if prolific, modern hoax. Yet the door refuses to stay closed. The sheer volume and intricate consistency of the iconography across thousands of stones suggest a level of coordination and underlying knowledge that seems extraordinary for a simple farming family. More intriguingly, some stones were reportedly found in ancient tombs and geological layers that appeared undisturbed, contexts that would predate any modern intervention. These claims, while controversial and difficult to verify independently, introduce a sliver of persistent doubt. If even a small subset of the stones were recovered from a sealed, ancient context, the entire narrative would require a drastic reevaluation. The debate over the Ica stones is a perfect microcosm of the larger conflict we have been exploring. On one side, conventional archaeology points to the confession, the lack of verifiable provenance for most stones, and the scientifically impossible content as clear evidence of a forgery. The established timeline is clear. Non-avian dinosaurs went extinct around 66 million years before humans evolved. The stones, therefore, must be false. On the other side, alternative researchers ask uncomfortable questions. Could the confession have been coerced to avoid legal trouble over artifact trafficking? Why would a hoaxer create such a vast and internally consistent body of work, much of which would not be understood or appreciated by the average tourist? They argue that the stones represent a genuine, if heretical, record, perhaps passed down through generations as a cryptic history of a forgotten age. The true lesson of the Ica stones may not lie in proving their authenticity. but in highlighting the absolute critical importance of provenance, the documented history of an object from the moment it leaves the ground. Without clear, scientifically recorded context, even the most astonishing artifact becomes a story without a verifiable beginning, adrift in a sea of speculation. These stones, whether ancient messages or modern myths, force us to confront a fundamental tension in our search for the past, the powerful human desire to find evidence of the extraordinary, and the rigorous, often sobering, discipline required to verify it. They stand as a stark reminder that in the quest for lost worlds, the first mystery we must solve is the story of the artifact itself. A story can become its own kind of artifact, sometimes more durable than stone. In the mountains bordering China and Tibet, a narrative emerged in the 1930s that would etch itself permanently into the lore of ancient mysteries. According to reports, an archaeological expedition in 1938 discovered a series of caves high in the Bayan Karaula range. Inside, they found not only ancient burial sites but a truly bizarre collection of relics. Lining the cave walls were hundreds of stone discs, each roughly a foot across, with a perfectly round hole in the center, resembling stone phonograph records. Even more startling were the remains found nearby, described as small-statured beings with unusually shaped skulls. The discs themselves, the story goes, were the real treasure. Their surfaces were inscribed with a continuous, microscopic spiral of tiny hieroglyphic characters, a script so fine it was nearly invisible to the naked eye. When the script was eventually translated decades later by a professor named Tsum Nui, it allegedly revealed an astonishing narrative. The discs told the story of the Dropa, a people from a distant star whose spacecraft crashed in the inaccessible mountains 12,000 years ago. Unable to repair their craft, the survivors took shelter in the caves where they eventually perished, leaving behind this record of their doomed journey. The implications were, of course, monumental, suggesting not only contact but a literal intermingling of human and extraterrestrial history in the deep past. The mainstream scientific view of this tale is unequivocal. There is no verifiable evidence that the Dropa stones, the alien remains, or even the professor who translated them ever existed in the academic record. No major museum houses these discs, no peer-reviewed journal published the translation, and no photographs from the original expedition have been substantiated. The entire account is generally classified as a modern myth, a fabrication that likely originated in mid-century sensationalist magazines and was amplified through retellings. From this perspective, the story is a cautionary lesson in how archaeological hoaxes can be constructed from whole cloth, blending exotic locations, mysterious scripts, and the perennial fascination with ancient astronauts into a compelling but baseless narrative. Yet, the persistence of the Dropa legend in popular culture is itself a fascinating phenomenon. It speaks to a deep and enduring human desire to find external origins for our own history, to look to the stars for answers about our past. When faced with gaps in the historical record or with artifacts that challenge understanding, the extraterrestrial hypothesis offers a dramatic shortcut, an explanation that bypasses the slow, difficult work of archaeological deduction. The Dropa story, whether fact or fiction, serves as a prime example of how a mystery can evolve. It begins with a tantalizing claim of physical evidence, but when that evidence cannot be produced or verified, the story itself becomes the artifact, passed down and reshaped with each retelling. This legend does not challenge mainstream science with proof, but rather highlights a different kind of cultural current, the powerful interplay between mystery, storytelling, and our need for wonder. It asks us to consider why we are so drawn to these narratives, and what they reveal about our hopes and our uncertainties when confronting the vast, silent stretches of prehistory. A single coin can carry the weight of an entire voyage. In the soft earth of a Native American shell hidden at the Goddard archaeological site in Maine, a team uncovered something that did not belong. It was a small, worn silver coin, a Norse penny minted between the years 1065 and 1080. On one side, the profile of a medieval king, on the other, a cross, a common symbol of the era. This artifact, known simply as the Maine Penny, is a solitary whisper of a much larger story. Its location is the key to the mystery. This was not found at Elance Orks Meadows in Newfoundland, the only confirmed Norse settlement in North America. It was discovered over 1,000 miles to the south, deep within a settlement of the Penobscot people, a community with no known direct contact with Viking explorers. The coin's presence in that specific place opens a door to a profound possibility that Norse contact with the Americas was not limited to a single, fleeting settlement in the far north, but may have involved wider, if sporadic, exploration or trade networks down the eastern seaboard. The conventional explanation offered by many archaeologists is one of cautious, long-distance trade. The coin could have been acquired by Norse explorers in Newfoundland and then traded slowly southward through extensive indigenous trade networks that spanned the continent. These networks were sophisticated highways of exchange, moving goods like copper from the Great Lakes region, shells from the Gulf of Mexico, and obsidian from the far west across thousands of miles over generations. In this view, the Maine Penny is not proof of a Norse voyage to Maine, but evidence of the incredible reach of Native American commerce, a single European object that journeyed far from its origin through countless hands. Yet the alternative question persists with quiet insistence. What if the trade route was shorter? Could a Norse nar, a sturdy merchant vessel, have sailed further down the coast, perhaps seeking new lands for timber or trading opportunities? The sagas speak of lands like Markland and Vinland, descriptions that could apply to regions well south of Newfoundland. A direct, though perhaps accidental, voyage to the Gulf of Maine is not impossible given Norse seafaring prowess. A single coin, lost or traded on such a journey, could then find its way inland. This small piece of silver does more than suggest a physical journey. It hints at a meeting of worlds. Imagine the moment of exchange, a Norse trader placing this strange, stamped metal into the hand of a Wabanaki hunter, perhaps in trade for precious furs or fresh provisions. Neither party could have fully understood the cultural worlds the other represented, yet a connection was made, however brief. The coin, likely valued more for its silver content than its royal insignia by its final owners, was eventually lost or discarded, settling into the midden where it would sleep for 9 centuries. The Maine Penny challenges us to expand our narrative of the medieval world. It moves the story from a simple binary of discovery versus isolation to one of complex, fragile threads of contact. It suggests a North America that was not a sealed continent awaiting Columbus, but a place where echoes of other shores occasionally and mysteriously washed up on its beaches. This artifact does not rewrite history with a bold stroke, but rather adds a subtle, crucial detail to the margins of the map. It reminds us that history is often written not in grand invasions, but in small, lost things that speak of chance encounters and forgotten connections. A solitary stone in a Minnesota field carries a message from another age. The Kensington Runestone is a slab of greywacke, a hard, gray stone weighing over 200 pounds. It was discovered in 1898 by a Swedish immigrant farmer named Olof Oman, who claimed to have found it tangled in the roots of a tree he was clearing from his land. Carved into its face is an inscription in runic characters, a form of ancient Norse writing. The text tells a harrowing tale. It states that in the year 1362, a party of 8 Goths or Swedes and 22 Norwegians on an exploration journey from Vinland were camped by a lake with 2 skerries or rocky islands. The inscription goes on to describe a tragic event that 10 men were red with blood and dead, a phrase often interpreted as an attack. It concludes with a plea for rescue. If this stone is authentic, its implications are revolutionary. It would place a band of Norse explorers not on the coast, but deep in the interior of North America, over a century before the voyages of Christopher Columbus. This would dramatically expand the known scope and timeline of pre-Columbian European contact, suggesting expeditions ventured far inland, perhaps following river systems from Hudson Bay. The stone's authenticity, however, has been a battlefield of academia for over a century. Linguists are sharply divided. Critics point to anomalies in the runic forms and grammatical structure, arguing they contain modern Swedish dialect influences and rune usage inconsistent with the 14th century. They propose the stone is a clever, late 19th century creation, perhaps by Oman himself or others in the local immigrant community, a piece of fabricated heritage. Supporters, however, counter with compelling evidence of their own. They highlight the discovery of what appear to be medieval-style mooring holes in nearby rocks, suggesting a boat landing site. They also point to geological studies of the inscription's weathering, which some argue shows a patina and mineral deposition consistent with centuries of exposure, not a recent carving. The stone itself became a cultural touchstone, a symbol of pride for Scandinavian Americans, and a focal point for those questioning traditional historical narratives. The controversy underscores a profound challenge in archaeology, the authentication of a lone artifact. Without other corroborating finds from the same event, the runestone exists in an evidential vacuum. Every detail, from the moss on the tree roots to the chemistry of the carved grooves, is scrutinized for clues. This debate is about more than runes and weathering. It is about the powerful human narratives we project onto the past. It speaks to a deep desire to find tangible connections across time and ocean, to see one's own heritage written into the landscape of a new world. Whether a medieval record or a modern hoax, the Kensington Runestone stands as a monument to this enduring quest. It forces us to confront how difficult it can be to hear the true voice of history when it speaks only once, and in a language we are still struggling to decipher. Aluminum belongs to the age of skyscrapers and aircraft, not to the era of extinct giants. Yet in 1974, along the banks of the Mureș River in Romania, workers digging a sand trench uncovered something that seemed to fuse those two impossibly distant times. Buried nearly 35 feet deep, nestled alongside the massive bones of a mastodon, was a strange, wedge-shaped object. It was heavy, metallic, and unlike any known tool from the region's ancient past. This artifact, now called the Aiud Wedge after the nearby city, was initially set aside as a curiosity. But when it was later cleaned and analyzed, the results sent shockwaves through the small community of researchers who examined it. The wedge was composed of an alloy, a mixture of metals with aluminum as its primary component. It was also covered in a remarkably thick layer of aluminum oxide, a type of corrosion that forms very slowly over time. The immediate problem was one of historical chronology. While aluminum is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust, it is never found in a pure, usable state in nature. It is locked tightly inside rocks and minerals. The process to extract and refine pure, industrial aluminum requires immense electrical energy and sophisticated chemistry, a feat first accomplished only in the 1820s. For such an object to be found in a geological layer alongside Pleistocene-era mastodon remains, which could suggest an age of tens of thousands of years, presented a staggering paradox. How could a metal synonymous with modern industry appear in a context that predates recorded human civilization by millennia? The initial theories were as dramatic as the discovery itself. Some proposed it was evidence of a lost prehistoric culture that had mastered a form of advanced metallurgy, a knowledge that was later completely erased. Others, looking at its aerodynamic, wedge-like shape, ventured it might be a piece of landing gear from an ancient, perhaps even non-human, vehicle. The artifact became a classic symbol of an out-of-place object that seemed to defy all logical explanation. However, as with many such mysteries, further investigation introduced more grounded possibilities. Later analyzers noted the alloy's specific composition was similar to those used in 20th century heavy machinery, particularly in the digging teeth of excavators or bulldozers. Skeptics proposed a much simpler story. The wedge could have been a piece of modern construction or mining equipment that simply fell into the pit during earlier, unrecorded work in the area. Over time, it could have settled deeper into the sediments, eventually resting near the ancient mastodon bones purely by coincidence, a classic case of two unrelated items being found together without a true connection. The thick oxide layer, while suggestive of age, could also form under certain chemical conditions in a riverbank environment over a shorter period. The Aiud Wedge, therefore, perfectly encapsulates the critical importance of context in archaeology. An object alone tells only half a story. Its true meaning is unlocked by its relationship to everything around it, the soil it lay in, the artifacts nearby, and the precise record of its removal from the ground. When that context is unclear or can be interpreted in multiple ways, as it was in this case, the artifact becomes a Rorschach test. We see in it what we are prepared to see, whether that is proof of a forgotten advanced age or a simple piece of modern debris. This wedge does not necessarily prove ancient astronauts or lost technology. Instead, it demonstrates something equally profound about our pursuit of the past. It shows how a single, unexplained object can act as a spark, igniting the imagination and pushing us to question the boundaries of the possible. It reminds us that the line between a world-changing anomaly and a mundane mistake is often drawn not by the object itself, but by the story of the earth that holds it. Coal is the compressed memory of ancient forests, not a hiding place for manufactured metal. In 1885, inside a coal mine near Wolfsegg, Austria, workers splitting a block of tertiary period coal made a startling discovery. Embedded within the dense black carbon was a small, nearly perfect cube of solid iron. Roughly 2 inches on each side, it had a distinct groove running around its center and slightly rounded edges. This object, known as the Wolfsegg Iron or the Salzburg Cube, presented an immediate and profound chronological problem. The coal seam from which it was recovered was dated to the Tertiary period, an epoch spanning from roughly 66 million to 2.6 million years ago. According to the established geological and anthropological timeline, this was an age when early ancestors of humans were small, tree-dwelling primates, and the most advanced technology on Earth was a sharpened stone. The presence of a machined-looking metal object within such ancient material seemed to defy the very sequence of natural history. The cube was initially examined with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Early analyzers confirmed it was primarily iron, with traces of nickel and sulfur. Some observers noted its symmetrical shape and the central groove, arguing these features were too precise to be natural. A few even claimed that microscopic examination revealed patterns consistent with casting, a human manufacturing process where molten metal is poured into a mold. If true, this would mean the cube was not a raw metallic nodule but a deliberately made object, a product of intelligence from a time when no such intelligence should have existed to produce it. The artifact quickly became a classic emblem of an out-of-place object, a physical riddle that seemed to place human industry in the age of giant mammals and shifting continents. Yet, as with many such discoveries, the story grew more complex with time. The cube itself was eventually lost, disappearing from the museum where it was held, leaving behind only descriptions, drawings, and a few plaster casts. This absence makes definitive modern analysis impossible, forcing us to rely on century-old reports. Later scientific opinion began to lean toward a natural explanation. Geologists pointed to a common phenomenon known as a concretion or a nodule. In certain conditions, minerals can precipitate from solutions within sedimentary deposits, forming hard, often surprisingly geometric lumps. Pyrite or fool's gold frequently forms perfect cubes in this way. While the Wolfsegg object was iron, not pyrite, the principle is similar. The central groove could be explained as a seam where two crystals met, or as a weathering pattern following a weaker plane in the metal. The suggestion of casting marks could have been misinterpretations of crystalline structures, or even later damage from the mining tools that extracted it. The Wolfsegg Iron, therefore, occupies a crucial middle ground in our exploration. It does not offer easy answers. Instead, it highlights the delicate interplay between observation and interpretation. It reminds us that the natural world is a master of mimicry, capable of producing shapes and forms that appear designed to the human eye. A concretion can look like a carved artifact, a weathered stone can resemble a tool, and a mineral formation can imitate a piece of machinery. This object forces a critical question, one that is essential for any investigator of anomalies. When we find something that seems impossible, is our first duty to declare a mystery solved, or to diligently search for a simpler explanation that fits within the vast, intricate tapestry of natural processes? The loss of the cube adds another layer of poignancy to the tale. We are left with a historical report, a description of a puzzle we can no longer hold in our hands. This absence itself is a lesson. It underscores the importance of preserving such finds, of subjecting them to ever-improving analytical techniques, and of maintaining a record as enduring as the questions they raise. The Wolfsegg Iron may ultimately be a testament to nature's artistry, a perfectly timed cubic coincidence that emerged from the darkness to challenge our assumptions. Its true legacy is not proof of a forgotten industrial age, but a permanent reminder to balance our wonder with rigorous scrutiny, to ensure that our hunger for the extraordinary does not blind us to the quiet, equally marvelous truths of the ancient earth. Gold has always been the medium of gods and kings, shaped into forms of power and reverence, but a particular collection of small gold artifacts, crafted by the Quimbaya civilization of Colombia over 1,000 years ago, seems to depict a form of power that should not exist in that time. Discovered in tombs and ceremonial sites, these delicate objects are officially classified by museums as stylized representations of the natural world, birds, insects, or perhaps even stylized fish. To the modern eye, however, their silhouettes are startlingly familiar. Several of these artifacts possess a sleek, delta wing body, a distinct vertical tail fin, and what appear to be horizontal stabilizers near the front, features that bear little resemblance to the anatomy of any bird or insect native to the region. Instead, they look uncannily like modern jet aircraft or aerospace designs. The proportions are not merely decorative, they are aerodynamic. When engineers and aerodynamics experts have examined replicas of these objects, they have noted something profound. The center of gravity and the placement of the lifting surfaces are configured in a way that is not just visually suggestive, but functionally sound for stable flight. In fact, when scaled up and tested in wind tunnels, some models have demonstrated stable gliding characteristics. This presents a quiet but potent puzzle. The Quimbaya flourished between 1,000 and 1,500 years after the Common Era, a culture renowned for its sophisticated metallurgy and intricate goldwork. They were master observers of their environment, and their art is filled with beautiful, recognizable depictions of frogs, bats, and other local fauna. So when we encounter an object that so clearly deviates from the known biological forms around them, we must ask a difficult question. What exactly were they modeling? The conventional archaeological perspective is rooted in artistic interpretation and symbolism. Scholars suggest these are highly abstracted forms, perhaps representing stingrays with their wide, flat bodies, or a type of flying fish leaping from the water. The Quimbaya artists were not aiming for photographic realism, but for capturing the essence of movement and spirit. The so-called stabilizers could be stylized fins or tails, and the sleek body a creative expression of speed and flow. This is a perfectly valid and culturally grounded explanation, one that respects the artistic license and symbolic language of the people who made them. Yet the precision of the aerodynamic principles, whether intentional or accidental, continues to whisper an alternative possibility. Could these objects be evidence of something more? The most speculative theory wonders if the Quimbaya artists were inspired by something they witnessed, a natural phenomenon or even a craft from a source we have not considered. A more grounded but still revolutionary line of thought asks if they represent a conceptual leap, a form of intuitive engineering. Is it possible that through keen observation of seeds spinning on the wind, of birds riding air currents, these ancient metallurgists grasped fundamental principles of lift and stability, and then expressed them not in equations but in gold? The Quimbaya artifacts do not demand a conclusion, but they powerfully challenge our assumptions about the boundaries of ancient inspiration. They force us to confront the fact that the human mind, in any era, is capable of remarkable leaps of intuition and form. Whether they are sacred symbols, abstract art, or unconscious blueprints for flight, these golden objects remind us that creativity is not bound by the technology of its time. Sometimes the shape of an idea can soar centuries ahead of the means to build it, waiting patiently in a museum case for a future generation to look closer and wonder. The mysteries of life's origin are written not in a book but on a stone. In a private collection in Colombia rests an artifact of profound and intimate strangeness, known as the genetic disc. Carved from a single piece of black stone called lyddite, this circular object is roughly the size of a large dinner plate, and it is estimated to be over 6,000 years old. Its surface is not decorated with gods or animals, but with a series of intricate, precise carvings that seem to tell a biological story far ahead of its time. One section clearly shows a sperm cell approaching an ovum, the very moment of conception. Another series of images depicts a cluster of cells dividing, the process of mitosis that builds a new organism. Further along the disk's surface, we see the unmistakable forms of a developing fetus at various stages, from a small, curled embryo to a more recognizable human form. The sequence is coherent, moving logically from one stage of development to the next, as if it were a page from a modern medical textbook translated into stone. This presents an intellectual shock of the highest order, the understanding of human reproduction at a cellular level, the visualization of sperm and egg, the mapping of embryonic growth. These are achievements of the last few centuries, unlocked by the invention of powerful microscopes and the painstaking work of generations of biologists. For a prehistoric culture, presumably without any optical technology, to depict these invisible, microscopic processes with such apparent accuracy feels like an impossibility. It is as if they had a window into a world they should not have been able to see. So how do we explain this disk? The conventional archaeological viewpoint approaches it with extreme caution, primarily because its provenance is not perfectly documented from an official excavation. This lack of a clear archaeological context means its age and origin are difficult to verify with absolute certainty. Some scholars suggest the carvings could be interpreted as symbolic representations of fertility and life cycles, using abstract patterns that we, with our modern knowledge, are misinterpreting as literal biological diagrams. The spiral shapes and clustered dots might represent seeds, water, or cosmic symbols, not cells and embryos. This is a reasonable and necessary skepticism, a reminder that we must guard against projecting our own understanding onto ancient symbolism. Yet, the specificity of the imagery is haunting. The depiction of a sperm cell with its distinct head and tail is particularly difficult to dismiss as a generic spiral. The sequential stages of the fetus show a progression in size and anatomical detail that aligns remarkably with what we now know to be true. This leads to the profound alternative questions the artifact raises. Could a prehistoric culture have developed an incredible intuitive understanding of life's beginnings through generations of careful observation, perhaps of miscarried pregnancies or through spiritual insight? Or does the disc point to something even more challenging, the possibility of contact with a civilization now lost that possessed a sophisticated biological science? The genetic disc does not offer easy answers, but it pushes the boundaries of what we believe possible for prehistoric scientific insight. It suggests that the human drive to understand our own origins is ancient, powerful, and may have found expression in ways we are only beginning to recognize. This stone is more than an artifact. It is a question carved in rock, asking us how deep the roots of knowledge truly go. Sometimes a story is so compelling it becomes its own artifact, regardless of its origin. This is the curious case of the Lolladoff Plate, said to have been discovered in Nepal by a Polish professor in the mid-20th century. This stone disc is etched with one of the most iconic images in modern alternative history. On its surface, a spiral pattern swirls like a galaxy, and beside it stands a figure with an oversized, hairless head, large almond-shaped eyes, and a slender body, a figure that matches almost perfectly the contemporary description of a gray alien. The being appears to be holding or pointing to the spiral, suggesting a connection between the entity and the cosmos. Visually, it is a powerful and immediate image, one that seems to fuse ancient art with a 20th century extraterrestrial narrative. It tells a story in a single glance of visitors from the stars imparting knowledge to ancient cultures, a tale that has captivated imaginations for decades. The allure of the plate lies precisely in this simplicity and its dramatic resonance with popular culture. It feels like a missing piece, a tangible clue left behind. Yet, when we examine the plate's history, we enter a realm of profound uncertainty. The provenance or documented history of the object is virtually non-existent. There are no archaeological records of its excavation, no scientific papers detailing its composition or context, and the chain of custody from its alleged discovery to its public appearance is murky at best. Most mainstream archaeologists and historians dismiss it outright as a modern creation, likely carved in the latter half of the 20th century, its aging artificially induced to give an appearance of antiquity. The spiral and alien figure, they argue, are not drawn from any known artistic tradition of the region, but are instead borrowed directly from the imagery of mid-century science fiction and UFO lore. In essence, it appears to be a piece of contemporary folk art crafted to tell a very modern myth. The enduring popularity of the Lolladoff Plate, however, is far more instructive than the object itself. It demonstrates a powerful human tendency, the desire for a narrative that transcends the ordinary limits of history. When faced with the vast, silent stretches of the past, the idea of ancient astronauts offers a dramatic and unifying explanation for many mysteries, from pyramid construction to strange artifacts. The plate serves as a perfect, simplified symbol for that entire school of thought. Its widespread circulation in books and documentaries highlights how a compelling image, once released into the world, can take on a life of its own, its questionable origins fading behind the strength of the story it tells. This artifact, likely a modern creation, therefore delivers one of the most crucial lessons in our entire exploration. It underscores the absolute necessity of critical evaluation. In a field filled with genuine mysteries like the Antikythera Mechanism or the Nazca Lines, the ability to distinguish between well-documented anomalies and inventive hoaxes is the most important tool we have. It asks us to temper our wonder with healthy skepticism, to seek out primary sources and verifiable data, and to recognize that sometimes the most satisfying story is not the truest one. The Lolladoff Plate does not challenge mainstream science with evidence, but it challenges us, the curious investigators, with a test of discernment. It reminds us that the pursuit of lost knowledge requires not just an open mind, but a discerning eye, one that can appreciate a good story while never ceasing to ask for its source. Egyptian hieroglyphs should not speak of grief in an Australian forest. Deep within the sandstone valleys of New South Wales, a series of over 300 carvings spread across two large rock faces tell a story that feels geographically and historically impossible. Known as the Gosford Glyphs, they depict classic Egyptian iconography, sacred symbols, and a narrative written in hieroglyphic script. According to translations offered by alternative researchers, the text is a lament. It tells of two Egyptian princes, sons of Pharaoh Djoser, who sailed across the sea, became shipwrecked in a strange and hostile land, and ultimately met their end there, far from the sands of home. The tale is poignant, a saga of exploration and tragic loss carved in stone on the other side of the world. If authentic, it would rewrite the history of ancient seafaring, suggesting Egyptian voyages of incredible distance and ambition, reaching the Australian continent thousands of years before European contact. The mainstream response from Egyptology, however, is swift and definitive. The glyphs are considered a modern forgery, a creation of the 20th century. Experts point to a series of glaring issues. The hieroglyphs are a chaotic mix of styles from vastly different periods of Egyptian history, something no trained scribe would ever produce. They contain grammatical errors and anachronisms, blending symbols in ways that make no linguistic sense. Furthermore, the specific story of the sons of Djoser does not align with any known Egyptian record. From a scholarly perspective, the carvings lack the patina and weathering one would expect from an artifact of genuine antiquity in that environment, appearing comparatively fresh. The most likely explanation is that they were created by local enthusiasts or returned soldiers with knowledge of Egyptology after World War I, perhaps as a creative hoax, a piece of folk art, or even an elaborate tribute. Yet, even with this consensus, a quiet mystery endures. Who exactly went to such immense effort, and for what purpose? The labor involved in carving hundreds of detailed symbols into hard sandstone is not trivial. Was it a simple prank that spiraled out of control, a sincere attempt to create a local legend, or something born from a more personal, symbolic need? The glyphs have become woven into the cultural fabric of the area, attracting visitors and inspiring stories regardless of their academic status. This final artifact brings our journey through these 20 impossible objects to a thoughtful close. The Gosford Glyphs stand as a powerful symbol of the critical line we must walk. They represent the human desire to find connection and grand narrative in the past, a desire so strong it can inspire the creation of physical evidence. This case highlights that not every challenge to mainstream science is built on a genuine anomaly. Some are built on modern myth, mistaken interpretation, or deliberate invention. The discernment between the two is not about shutting down curiosity, but about applying the very rigor that makes discovery meaningful. It requires us to balance our sense of wonder with a respect for evidence, to welcome the question while demanding clear answers. The true lesson of the Gosford Glyphs, and indeed of our entire exploration, is that the past is a conversation. It speaks through genuine, bewildering artifacts like the Antikythera Mechanism, and it also speaks through our own stories, our hopes, and sometimes our clever deceptions. To listen wisely is to appreciate the mystery while never ceasing to look for the truth behind the marks on the stone. These patterns are not random, but point toward a handful of profound possibilities that attempt to rewrite our origin story. The first and perhaps most enduring narrative is that of a lost advanced civilization, a concept most famously crystallized in the legend of Atlantis. This theory proposes that a sophisticated, technologically adept society existed in deep prehistory, only to be wiped from the map by a cataclysmic event, perhaps a comet impact, a massive volcanic eruption, or a rapid rise in sea levels. In this view, artifacts like the Antikythera Mechanism or the Piri Reis Map are not isolated miracles, but scattered fragments of that lost world's knowledge, carried forward by survivors or preserved in cryptic traditions. It is a story of a golden age and a great reset, explaining how complex ideas could appear, vanish for millennia, and then reappear. The appeal is its sweeping simplicity. It ties many disparate anomalies into a single, elegant cause. Yet the challenge for this theory is the very thing that makes it compelling: the lack of a central, undeniable ruin. Where is the metropolis, the infrastructure, the widespread material culture that such a global civilization would leave behind? Without that foundational evidence, it remains a powerful myth, a placeholder for our suspicion that the archaeological record is incomplete. A second, even more dramatic framework seeks answers not in a lost human past, but beyond our world entirely. The ancient astronaut hypothesis suggests that many of these artifacts are evidence of contact with extraterrestrial visitors in antiquity. From this perspective, the Nazca Lines become landing strips, the Dendera Light a representation of alien technology, and the genetic disk knowledge imparted by advanced beings. This narrative directly addresses the anachronism problem by introducing an external source for the advanced knowledge. It transforms human history from a solitary climb to a story of intervention and tutelage. While captivating, this theory often faces criticism for potentially diminishing the incredible achievements of ancient cultures themselves. It can be seen as a form of intellectual bypass, attributing human ingenuity to an outside force rather than grappling with the full, untapped potential of the human mind across time. Furthermore, it relies on a chain of assumptions, requiring not only proof of visitation, but also that these visitors chose to share specific technical knowledge while leaving no unambiguous physical evidence of their own presence. A third, more earthbound explanation requires no lost continents or interstellar travelers, but focuses on the resilience and occasional fragility of human knowledge itself. This view holds that ancient cultures were far more ingenious and observant than we typically credit. They propose that innovations like precise astronomy, basic electricity, or aerodynamic principles could have been discovered independently through generations of meticulous observation and experimentation, only to be lost later. Knowledge is not a steadily rising line, but a flickering flame. It can be extinguished by social collapse, natural disaster, or simply the fading of an oral tradition. The burning of the Library of Alexandria is a classic, poignant example of such a loss on a grand scale. This theory asks us to consider a world where the Quimbaya goldsmiths truly did intuit principles of flight, where a single Hellenistic workshop mastered gear trains that would not be reinvented for centuries, and where ancient mariners, driven by wind and current, journeyed farther than our records show. Here, the artifacts are not relics of a single super-civilization, but isolated peaks of achievement in a rugged, varied landscape of human history, peaks that were later shrouded in the fog of forgotten time. So how do we navigate these competing narratives? A guiding principle often invoked is Occam's razor, the idea that the simplest explanation that fits all the facts is usually preferable. In practice, this often leads mainstream science toward the third path, favoring human ingenuity and the loss of knowledge over more complex scenarios involving unknown civilizations or extraterrestrial intervention. The reasoning is clear. We have definitive proof of human intelligence, and we have documented cases of cultural amnesia. Therefore, extending those known phenomena to explain an anomaly is considered more parsimonious than inventing entirely new historical actors. Yet, even Occam's razor has its limits. It is a tool for constructing models, not a definitive arbiter of truth. The simplest explanation is not always the correct one, especially when dealing with a fragmentary record. Sometimes the facts themselves are so stubbornly complex that they demand a more complex solution. The true test lies not in elegance alone, but in evidence and in our willingness to follow where it leads, even into uncomfortable territory. The gears of the Antikythera Mechanism and the vast lines of Nazca are separated by an ocean and a millennium, yet together they whisper the same unsettling truth. Our shared past is not a simple, linear story of slow ascent. It is a tapestry woven with threads of genius that appear, vanish, and sometimes reappear in patterns we are only beginning to trace. These 20 artifacts, from the Baghdad Battery to the Quimbaya gold objects, collectively sketch a portrait of ancient humanity that is far more curious, more inventive, and more mysterious than a single textbook narrative could ever contain. They remind us that the chapters of history are not all neatly bound. Some pages are torn, others are written in languages we have forgotten how to read. It is crucial to acknowledge that not every object we have explored may be a genuine window into a lost technology. Some, like the Coso Artifact or the Gosford Glyphs, stand as powerful lessons in the necessity of scrutiny, teaching us that the desire for mystery must always be balanced by a respect for evidence and clear provenance. The journey through these anomalies is not about accepting every claim at face value, but about engaging in a more profound dialogue with the past. The very existence of these puzzles, whether ultimately explained by human ingenuity, natural processes, or modern creation, serves a vital purpose. It challenges the complacency of a finished story. It forces us to remain humble students, acknowledging that the map of human achievement is still being drawn, and there may be entire continents of capability we have yet to rediscover. History, in its truest sense, is not a closed book sitting on a shelf. It is an ongoing investigation, an active excavation of not just soil, but of ideas. Each of these artifacts, in its own way, invites you to become part of that investigation. We encourage you to take this curiosity further. Look up the original research, read the debates, and weigh the arguments for yourself. Which of these impossible objects resonates most deeply with you? Does the precise mechanics of the ancient Greek computer stir your imagination, or do the silent, giant forms in the Peruvian desert fill you with a deeper wonder? Share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Let us continue the conversation. If you are fascinated by the boundaries of the known and the mysteries that lie just beyond, consider subscribing. We are committed to more journeys into the unexplained, where we persistently question the stories we think we know, always seeking the next clue in humanity's grand and unfinished